Good morning, good afternoon, perhaps good evening. Greetings from nature. Today we're going to explore DAW Mix Organization. Let's say you receive a multi-track from an engineer. You open up the session and it looks like a jungle in there. You have no idea what the track labeling is. All the order of every single instrument is completely confusing. We're going to go through succinct steps in order to make sure that we achieve professional standards of organization so that we can spend most of our time having fun and mixing and making cool music rather than finding our way through a mess of a DAW multi-track session. What do I mean by professional standards, right? If we're trying to achieve professional standards, basically, if you line up 5 different engineers and you ask them what the standard is, there isn't a standard. So what we're trying to go for is basically showing your work to another engineer without you being there, to explain anything. And somebody else has to look at what you've done, and intuitively, everything has to make sense. So with that bar that high and that standard, let's jump in to explore very succinct steps to achieve a great mix organization. These are the list of steps we will follow throughout this video. Don't worry about taking note of all of them right now. We will go through them together step by step. But I do want to say before we jump in that this is something that a recording engineer should also keep in mind. If they do their job properly, we have less of a mess to fix later on. So let's set this aside and let's take a peek at the folder that we've received with the multi-track. So here, the first step we have is descriptive session labeling. If we look at this, the labeling of these sessions is not very intuitive. Until last rough, Jimmy, new, OD, copy, we have no idea what this is. I know that the name of the name of the song is called Until the Sun. And I will just assume that this is the last session which we should open up. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a duplicate. I'm going to copy this track and I'm going to label it something more descriptive, like Until the Sun EGM multi-track check 1. Now I prefer to err on the side of being very, very thorough and again, achieving that professional standard, which is what anybody needs to see this and go, oh, I understand what this is. Then let's go and open this session up. And this is what we have. We hit play. Changing my heart, Lord, no. And we're kind of in the middle of the song and it's zoomed in and we don't really know what's going on. So I know that I will embark on my multi-track check in a moment, but I just want to take a moment to say that we should always keep in mind to do a save as of every step that we clear, as well as create an old sessions folder where I can keep all of the old iterations like these so that I can go back to them. The important thing about this is when I do a save as, I can go back to my work if I make a mistake. The importance of creating this old sessions folder is so that I can grab everything that is not currently in use, save it in there, and now anyone that opens up my work has only one thing only to see. Of course, this is what they need to open. Oh, you need to go back. Here are my old sessions. Yes, a session file backup is something that does this automatically for you, but I like to keep tabs with the labeling that I need, etc., etc. So now let's move on to this next one, which is maximize screen and be able to see the entire arrangement. This right now starts in the middle and we can't really see what's up. So I'm going to double click on the zoom tool and now we can kind of see more of the arrangement, but I'm always wanting to get the most out of our real estate so that we can work clearly. And also, if anybody opens this up, they should be able to navigate our sessions easily. So we have all of these rulers here that we do not need. We have inserts, which at this point we do not need. So I will take off anything that is superfluous. I do want to know what the markers are in the tempo. I do not need the meter, the key, or chords. I'm also going to take away the inserts for now. And I do not need to see the names of the tracks for now. So you can see that we have greatly maximized the real estate. And we can now look at everything that we need and navigate it a little bit better. By the way, I think we should always leave our sessions exactly this way when you do a final save so that when people open it, they can see the entire thing clearly. And I'm also going to put the cursor right at the top and leave this as a courtesy. Again, you hit play, boom, it starts from the beginning. Now, let's create a master fader. This here at the very bottom of the screen, I'm going to create a new track and we're going to do a stereo master fader. The reason for this is that we need to be able to hit play and see what the summing of the level is. And this is the meter that will allow us to take a view at that.
Never let it run, never let it run out until the sun's done burning.
So here now we see that we're peaking at minus 5.6, and only because we have a read of the master fader, right? It's also important to keep the master fader at 0 dB, because if we turn this down,
never let it run,
or up,
run out until
now our read of the summing of the level going into the master fader would not be accurate. So again, a master fader and leave it at 0 dB. And I'm just going to call it MF for now. Next step, import reference mixes and level match them. Reference mixes, I live and die by them. Reference mixes will basically allow us to double check our work. How are we doing on the top end extension, on the low end extension? I need to have inside my session the ability to hit play on commercially released great reference mixes, which have full frequency extension, which have full spatial width and great dynamics, so that I can quickly check my work against them. So here we are going to import audio, and I have prepared some reference mixes here, and you see that they are WAV files. It's important, this goes without saying, but I have to say it, that we have to work with commercially released, reputable, what the artists and engineers intended you to listen to. So nothing ripped from online sources that are questionable. These are the high bar standards that we're aiming towards. So while this takes a second to processing, when they come in, we're going to put them at the top of the session, and immediately we're going to bring their level down. So here they are, and we see that they are, of course, mastered. They're quite loud. So if we play any one of these tracks against our mix in progress, it's going to be brutally loud and unfair. So immediately I bring these down to, I'm going to say about minus 12 dB is a good starting point. So that again, when we try to reference how are we doing on low and high frequency extension, we can be fair and compare apples to apples, if you will. I'm also going to, because I don't need to listen to the entire song, I'm just going to do a little edit right here and clean this up. Okay, so here we have our reference mixes. Next, add markers. Oh, let's go and mute these guys for now. So let's add markers. Here it seems like the tempo is going up and down, and the engineer was nice enough to have this as the tempo grid, but we have no idea where's the verse, where's the anything. So let us take a look just really quickly here, and it seems like the song begins right about here. And this sounds like the intro. So in Pro Tools, if you're on a laptop, function return, and we can enter the name of the section. We can also do this on the fly. So this is the intro, of course. And I bet $1 that this is the verse.
Your smile gets under my skin.
And then we would never guess that the chorus is coming up.
Never let it run.
And you see here that I am doing VS1 and CH1 as an abbreviation of verse and chorus, just so that I can quickly take a look at these and at a glance just see what they are. Because this is a cooking show, I'm just going to magically populate this with the correct markers so we can move on quickly. Boom! And like magic, here are our completed markers. Let's move on to the next step: descriptive audio file and track labeling. So if we look here, it seems like overall the tracks are very, very well labeled, right? This obviously is DR kick in. Here, let's take a closer look. This is drums kick in until the sun .comp, right? So this makes total sense. And if we see overall, the entire multitrack is super descriptive. Mellotron, low, until the sun, .comp, everything. You know what it is without explaining. But there are a couple that could be better. Like, for example, audio 0801. Oh no, this is the hallmark of amateur hour. So no, this is not going to cut it, right? What about this here? Jimmy 02. Who's Jimmy? I have no idea. So if we try to solo these tracks. Okay, so that's the bass, and let's see who's Jimmy. Jimmy is a funky, distorted bass, which sounds pretty awesome. So knowing that this track and its labeling of the audio file is not descriptive, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a duplicate playlist so that I can keep the track as it was sent to me safe, but I'm going to create another one called bass until .comp. And now I'm going to take this track and I'm going to consolidate it, which is basically going to rewrite a brand new audio file, and it will take the name of the track. So now I have my as sent to me track safe and the new one. I'm going to do the same thing for Jimmy, of course. So duplicate track, and this is going to be bass, let's say fuzz, and then we're going to, there we go, consolidate the track, and now the labeling is proper. Let's move on to the next step. We are now at organize track order. Okay, so we are going to top to bottom organize this multitrack in a way that is going to be easy to navigate, understanding that eventually we're going to want to mute all the tracks and unmute them top to bottom. And the top track is going to be the most foundational track of the entire multitrack. So in the arrangement, the top track is going to be the most important. We're also going to do families of instruments. So drums first, and then percussion, then bass. This is the thought process that we're trying to follow. So if we see here, we have kick in, kick out, snare top, snare bottom. This makes great sense. And then we have toms 1, 2, and 3, and hi-hats, and then overheads. I am going to move these overheads and rooms right underneath the snare. Now, this is a personal preference. You don't have to do this exactly the same. But for me, personal preference is the kick super important. Obviously, the snare right there. And to me, the overheads are the next important thing. Why? Because the toms play every once in a while, and they're not crucial to the sound of the drums. Once this is done, I move on to the bass. Well, is the bass the next thing? I think not, actually. I think the percussion, which is all right here, right? Tambourine, clap, etc., this should come after the drums. Why? Because they're percussive elements, and they are going to be part of the sound of the all of the drums, basically, if you will, right? As a percussion unit. Then we have the bass. This makes sense to me. Then it seems we have a bunch of guitars, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And here we have all of these different guitars. It seems like these are all the guitar tracks. Well, which ones of these are the most important tracks? I think that these three are the most important. Why? Because they play throughout the track. They are the main rhythm guitar. So it behooves me to put them up top so that when I start unmuting, I build in the sound of the main guitar first and then go on to the more ornamental ones, if you will. Then we get to the keyboards. If we look at the keyboards, arguably we have, let's see, this actually looks about right. Perhaps we can grab this Mellotron here, move it up top, but we're doing pretty good. Then we have vocals. The only thing that I would make better is that this being the lead vocal, I would have it be right at the top. And then this chorus vocal, which happens right before the bridge, actually. This is a little bit confusing, guys, because this is mixing. So there we go. Now we have a lead vocal, we have a chorus vocal, we have a bridge vocal, and then we have all of the harmonies below. So this to me now has an order that is intuitive, that's great, and that again follows most important to the top, most ornamental to the bottom. Now, for those of you thinking out there, but why are you putting the vocals at the bottom if they're the most important thing? I want to say that this is not an exact science, meaning this is your personal preference. So for me, the important thing is keep the most important thing at the top, the most ornamental at the bottom, which makes sense until I get to the vocals, because for me, the vocals are so special that I place them at the bottom, almost as the cherry on top of the whole mixing cake, if you will. All right, so let's move forward. Now we have splitting tracks if needed. Here, I will anticipate potential things that I would want to do, like for example, with this lead vocal. So let's say this lead vocal has a performance that runs throughout, and I might want to instead process the verse in one way and the chorus in another way. So what I'm going to do is grab this vocal and immediately duplicate it. I'm going to duplicate it 2 other times. And now with these 3 copies that I have, I am going to make this top copy the verses. So I'm going to cut these 3. And then I'm going to make another group with the choruses. And once again, I'm going to cut these here and leave the bridge alone, and then the choruses. So if this is not making a lot of sense, it will in a second. So here you see that I have the same vocal 3 times, right? I am going to have this top track be the verse. These 2 bottom tracks I am going to mute. So I'm going to Command M, mute these tracks. And then when it comes to the chorus, I will mute this track right here and mute this track right here because this is going to be my chorus track. This will be my bridge track at the bottom. So verse, again, mute, mute, leave the chorus, and then we know that this is the bridge, so mute, mute, and then mute, mute. So hopefully this makes a little bit more sense, and of course we should go ahead and clean this up a little bit. And you get the gist of it. So again, because this is a cooking show, I'm going to fast forward to having this all cleaned up, but you get the idea that we're splitting tracks because we anticipate having to process these differently, and we just want to get this stuff out of the way and done. And like magic, here we are. So we have our track with the verses, the choruses, and the bridge. I personally like to just mute these tracks so I can see them in the event that I need to play with them or re-edit later. Let's move on to our next step. So now that we have done all the splitting of the tracks, let's go and create groups. So what are groups? Groups are basically editing groups, right? We want to be able to treat all of the drums together, meaning I want to hit the mute button once and all of them mute. I want to solo, all of them solo. What determines what to group? Personally, I do not like to group all of the percussion and all of the guitars. Rather, what I'd like to do is group sounds that together make up one sound. So if I open up this little window here where the groups are, I'm going to select all of the acoustic drums, which together make up the drum sound, and make a new group called, you'll never guess it, drums. Then as far as the percussion, I'm not really going to group these as the percussion group because they're all different sounds, right? But maybe these two, which actually I could have ordered a little bit better, these two are claps that go together, right? So if we listen here, these together make up one sound. So I am going to create a new group and call them claps. With that in mind, these two bass tracks are not a group because they are completely different, but this guitar here, if we listen here, pardon me, to this guitar, I know it's very quiet, so if you listen in, there's an acoustic guitar, which is the same performance but with 3 different microphones. So of course, these 3 together make up the group of the guitar acoustic. And I typically like to put the name of the family before so that I see all of my guitar and then whatever it is. If we move down, this is not a group, this is not a group, perhaps these 2. So these 2 together do make up a group. And again, this is going to be guitar, chorus, melody, for example. I'm going to just quickly do the rest of the groups and do all the keyboards and vocals in our cooking show. And here, by magic, I've created all of these new groups down here. So a bunch of keyboards, a bunch of vocals, we're now totally ready to go. Let's move on to the next step now that we have all our groups, which is track colors. Again, visual cue to help us navigate super easily. So here we have, I'm going to make this a touch bigger, and we have our drums. This is going to be the first instance of a single instrument shared across all these tracks. Then we're going to have tambourine, claps. All of these are percussion instruments. Here, again, to taste. There's no formula for this stuff, guys. So if you want to color all of your percussion with one single color, like for example, stylish purple, You might do this. You might also want to maybe grab these two claps here and make them a slightly different shade. So maybe you're going to make them a little bit, let's see, a little darker. That could also work. No issues there. So quickly, I've shaded all the groups just a little bit different so that I can make a little bit quicker sense out of them at a glance. So now that these are done, let's move on to our next step, which is to get rid of dead air and add fades. What does dead air mean? If we look here at, say, the drums come in on bar 6. And there's really nothing before this. So right now the issue here is that our CPU or computer is having to play back all of this silence. And even though we don't hear anything, it is really bogging down the processing power. So we don't need that. We can just quickly edit right to the beginning and make a tight fade in right before it. The important thing here is to make sure that you do not do a fade in chopping off or changing the amplitude of the audio itself. So this happens again at the end. If we listen to the last hit, there. So here we have a decay of a cymbal, and we really need to have it ring out. Obviously, we don't really see the cymbals fading out, so you need to really go and listen to every single instrument and carefully edit so that you don't miss a breath here and there. So, for example, this tambourine here is very simple, right? We can just chop this off. Oops. And let me go back again. Here we go. So we can chop and fade, because now I'm totally sounding like I'm in a cooking show. And here with our claps that we have in a nifty little group, we could again do the same thing and chop anything that is not needed and do elegant fades. Also, these fades, what they do is they help us with any noise not abruptly just coming in. So again, we want to just have our audio as clean as possible. Now, to continue with our cooking show vibe, I'm just going to go ahead and do all these fades, and like magic, boom, they will appear in front of us. And here we have it. Now we have every single track has been cleaned for dead air and fades. And as you can see, now this daunting multi-track we had a second ago looks so much more manageable, right? We can see the arrangement very, very clearly. Everything, every single region starts right where it should. We have elegant fades, fade-ins and fade-outs that are not going to make anything pop or click. We're well on our way now, and a far cry from where we started. Continuing, let's do a rough mix, balance, and panning. So now the time has come to finally listen to this and start making some cool music. So let's take a listen very quickly to this song from the beginning to, let's say, the first chorus, and kind of get a vibe for what the song is all about. And then that's going to inform emotionally where and how we should balance and pan things too. So let's check this out.
Your smile gets under my skin. You walk like the beach just dropped in. Turn this cloudy afternoon to a bright sunny day. September brought a change in my heart. Lord knows I should have felt it from the start. Though I tried to resist, it only made you persist. Never let it love, my love, my love. My love won't run out.
Great. All right. So, this song, Until the Sun by Lindy Hoshikawa, we are going to do a rough mix, and I like to always start at the densest part of the mix, which of course is the chorus. So I'm going to create a loop right around the chorus, and like I said, I'm going to mute everything. And I'm also going to undo my groups so that I can just make sure to go top to bottom and uncover this almost like I'm constructing a house, right? We're doing the foundation first, and eventually we'll get to the ornaments, but let's start right from the beginning. I will probably do drums and bass and maybe one of the guitars, and then we'll just speed up until the end. So let's start with the first track, which is the kick in. Kick out. I'm going to want a little more low end, so I'm going to boost the kick out a little bit. Snare top, snare bottom. Actually going to turn up the kick a little bit. And this, just keep it very instinctual. The hi-hat. So here's the first time that we get to decide which way we're going to pan something. The hi-hat, I'm going to pan it to the left. Why? Because I want to air drum to this. So unless the band or the artist tells me otherwise, I'm going to make executive decisions like this. And of course, I'm going to pan these overheads. Similarly, I want to make sure though, the hi-hat is to the left. How about the room? Just a little too splatty, so I'm going to bring these down a hair. Great. And the toms I'm going to do later. Here we have these claps. Considerably louder. So you see here that the point is not to overthink this. It's just meant to be something very instinctual. So tambourine, considerably louder, and I'm going to pan it against the hi-hat to the right. Great. I'm going to bring these down a hair. Bass! It's a little loud. I'm done with this, but I still think the kick drum could be a little bit punchier, louder. Great. So again, very instinctual. I'm going to just place the guitars in here very quickly, and then I'm going to do the rest of the mixing without you guys bogging you guys to hear everything, and we'll move on. But this is basically the concept. Emotionally, where should we stop the fader so that it feels like we want it to? And then the panning is basically dictated by, do I want to air drum? Where do I want things to happen? But then we always have to consider that there's a technical component, right? If we have the hi-hat and the tambourine panned at the same side, they're going to mask each other's because of the similar frequency content. So we might want to pan things opposite each other to get a wider mix and to have things not mask each other. Great. Pan this to the left a little bit. Anticipating that the vocals are going to be in the center. Kick drum could still come up a little bit. So following this, I am going to now magically do a rough mix of the entire thing and loop again the chorus in a second so you can hear how this all comes together. Okay, and now I've done a very quick rough mix of this, which again favors how it feels overall, and it sounds like this.
Never let it run, never let it run out. Never let it run, never let it run out until the sun's done burning. My love, my love, my love, my love won't run out.
And it sounds musical to me. It sounds groovy. It makes my body move like it should. All the motifs, dun dun dun, of the chorus I can also hear. The vocals are nested enough so that the instruments sound energetic, yada yada. Again, instinctual, instinctual, instinctual. All of this done, we can move on to the next thing, which is rough mix gain staging. So remember how I was saying that there's always this mixing battle between how it feels, because that's ultimately what listeners are going to be paying attention to. But then also the technical side of things, right? We need to make sure that things are not distorting and that we don't paint ourselves in a corner later. One of these things is to consider is gain staging. So again, if we go to the chorus, as we can anticipate, is going to be one of the loudest parts of the mix. If we go to the master fader,
Never let it run, never let it run out.
it's telling us we are peaking at around minus 2.5. What this means is that we have less than 3 dB of headroom, which is not enough, anticipating that we're going to put one EQ and one compressor somewhere, and immediately our headroom is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and we're probably going to distort right away. So the thing that I like to do is, now that we have a super groovy, awesome rough mix and balance between everything, is grab all the tracks and make a brand new group with all of the tracks, right? Not our reference mixes. And I'm going to make a new group and call it multi-track all. There we go. So now we are leaving we have selected everything. We're leaving our master fader right at 0. And now let's bring these down until we peak where we're supposed to. So here we go.
Never let it run, never let it run out. Never let it run, never let it run out until the sun's done burning. My love, my love, my love, my love won't run out. Never let it run, never let it run out. Never let it.
That's pretty good. So we're now peaking at minus 11, like I said, between minus 12 and minus 10. So now obviously what happens is we have a way quieter mix, but it doesn't matter. You can grab your listening playback volume and just turn it up a little bit, right? If need be. The important thing here is to have the summing of all of the tracks going to the master fader give us that minus 10, minus 12 bit of headroom. Moving forward, create stereo aux tracks. So now that our gain staging is accurate, we're going to want to perhaps treat these acoustic guitars that are grouped as one unit because they are one sound. We don't want to go and create 3 different EQs for each one of these tracks. We want to put one EQ that is going to treat all of them together. So the thing that we're going to do is let's create a new track, and it's going to be a stereo aux track. This stereo aux track, we're going to call it something descriptive like guitar acoustic, guitar AC for short. And I am going to output all of these tracks out of the same bus, which now let's say it's bus 1 and 2. Then the input of this aux is of course going to be buses 1 and 2. So now these 3 tracks are going through this aux track routed properly. The only thing that could make this better is that bus 1 and 2 is not really descriptive, right? The name, the labeling is not really descriptive. So if we go here to our IO and go to buses 1 and 2, we can double click here and write something like guitar acoustic. And now look at that. Look at that. Total pro look. The last thing we can do is, these are a group, right? If we solo these, soloing basically mutes every other track in the multi-track, muting the aux track. So we need to solo safe this aux track. So we do this by pushing Command, and then if you see here, the S goes gray. And now, even in solo, we can still hear this guitar track coming through the aux. So this is something that I am going to magically do for all of the different tracks that need a stereo aux. And like magic, we now have all of our aux tracks ready to go. Wherever we have a group, we have right underneath it an aux properly labeled so that we can process, let's say, this mellotron with high and low together with one plugin capturing both of them. And we see that our labeling is proper. Now our next step as we get to the end here is creating aux tracks for effect templates. So of course we're going to eventually have a reverb and a delay that we're going to be sending things to. So let's anticipate this, get it done, and have it ready to go. So I will create 2 stereo aux tracks, and we are going to call them something descriptive like reverb, and then the next one is going to be delay. Of course, we will route, let's say, buses 5 and 6 for the reverb, and then 7 and 8 for the delay, which of course, we being pro, always trying to be pro, we need to go here and label properly. So reverb and delay. Boom, we're going to also solo isolate these 2, and then let's go ahead and just throw in a reverb that we want to use. So here, let's just find something like deverb. It's totally fine. And then for delay, let's have something like mod delay. Perfect. So now these 2 are totally ready to go. What else? Look at this. We're at the end. Save often and back up your work. So now that we're done, I'm going to go to number 2 and do a save as here. And we're going to call it something descriptive like EGM Mix Organization. Done. And now if we go and take a look at this. So guys, you remember where we started? That gray blob of awfulness. Look at this. We now have a multi-track that is super easy to look at. We can see the arrangement. We can navigate very easily. Our reference mixes are in. We have something that sounds groovy.
Never let it run.
We are properly gain stage. We're totally ready to go. So in short, this is an attempt to try to organize our brain so that we can spend as much time mixing and having fun while preparing us and allowing us to do so by getting rid of all of this, yes, perhaps a little bit more boring stuff first. I hope this has been useful to you. Please keep this in mind when you also record. You're the recording engineer, so you can be nice to your mixing engineers and have this ready. And I hope this really gives you a lot of help and energy and enthusiasm when you go and have the most fun you've ever had mixing a properly organized multi-track. See you on the next one.